Hi there, welcome to my studio. Feel free to come on in, take a cozy seat. My name is Caro, and today is a gloomy, rainy Monday afternoon. I just finished doing some turmeric latte and I'm wearing super comfy clothes, and today I just wanted to invite you to join me in the studio for a super laid back, cozy, gloomy afternoon, and the one I would love to share with you books that are related to all things art, creativity, nature, plants, fungi, critters like pollinators, indigenous rights, and all the good stuff. So feel free to take a cozy seat, make yourself a drink, and join me in sharing some of my favorite books to keep in my art studio. In case you're new here, hello, welcome. My name is Caro. I am a painter. I paint with earth, pigment, watercolors, and I paint all things related to plants and fungi, their taxonomic divisions, as well as the energetics that they carry. So the bridge in between spirituality, science, and plants and fungi. So anyways, I would say, a small amount of books in my art studio in comparison to the amount of books that I have in my house, but these are some of my favorite books that inspire me to create, to fall in love more with nature. So let's go and get into it. All right, let's get started with one of my all-time favorite books. That is The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. So in case you're not familiar with Rick Rubin is a music producer, and he's produced musicians from hip hop to metal and all things in between. In my opinion, he is just like a creative guru, a music genius, and even though he has focused his creativity in producing music, Rick Rubin's The Creative Act really speaks about anybody on a creative journey. I, as someone who doesn't make music, but rather creates paintings, have felt this has been the most inspiring book I have ever read regarding, let's call it the creative condition or the creative right, the creative thing that happens to all of us people that love creating and getting curious and also experience creative block or fear or imposter syndrome. One of the things that I absolutely adored about this book is that you can literally open it on any page, just like the Bible, and you can find an amazing message for you. Each chapter is very little, and each piece is probably like 2 or 3 pages. So let's say I open it up right now and I'm in the page called Look Inward. If I check out another part, let's say here I have a section called Crafting and Breaking the Sameness. And this for me becomes, so when Rick Rubin released this book, he is saying that these are not a cookie cutter recipe. This is not steps to follow in order to be creative, but rather his experience as someone that creates, what has worked for him, and what he finds to be the common threads in between creativity for all beings. I absolutely adore this book, not only for the words that it shares, but I feel that it is a big invitation for us to own our own way of being creative. And I think this might sound weird to say, but I know you'll understand what I mean when I say this book also speaks a lot about the non-visible and the non-linear and the mysterious aspect of creativity. And there's so much that is not being said with words that is shared in between the pages. I absolutely adore this book, and I recommend it to anybody that's ever felt inspired, curious to create, anybody that has also felt stuck or fearful about creating, and anybody who is in a feeling of thirst for experiencing a deeper connection with your own craft and honestly life in general. A spiritual practice, a human practice, an action practice. So many things to say about this book, but honestly, if you haven't read it, just read it. It's the absolute best. While we are on the topic of creativity and just books that truly inspire, my own creative journey are books that are either autobiographies, biographies of artists, or just any book that is portraying and sharing the creative process, the methods, the routines that artists follow and live through, and also just a deep dive into what inspires people to create, whether that is learning about why they choose a specific topic or the energetics that are working around any plants that they're working with. And two books that I adore within that topic are two books regarding Hilma af Klint's work. This book here, which is Hilma af Klint, What Stands Before the Flowers, is a book that was published by MoMA. The name What Stands Behind the Flowers is the name of Hilma af Klint's retrospective show that just finished in MoMA. This show focused on her botanical energetic watercolor paintings, and this book is a deep dive not only into seeing those beautiful botanical watercolor paintings that Hilma worked on, but also the poems, the energetics, the elementals that have inspired and were part of each one of these paintings. There are some macro shots of the paintings, and I personally loved this art show. This has been top 2 art shows that have made me emotional in so many ways. I actually have a whole YouTube video sharing about that exhibit and a few days in New York City and why this exhibition meant so much for me as someone that works portraying the scientific aspect as well as the energetics of plants and fungi. And I adore this deep dive into this book because I feel that whenever we can learn more about the universe of any creator, it's an invitation for us to step deeper into our own creative ways, our own creative voices, and I adored this one. And I also have another book portraying Hilma af Klint's work. This one is Hilma af Klint, Methods and Notes. It is a look into Hilma af Klint sketchbooks as well as final paintings. Like a lot of her sketchbooks have the sketches for her final pieces, and they are pretty much the backbone of her bigger pieces. The symbolism, if you're not familiar with this artist, Hilma was all about downloads and just getting a lot of information from the ethereal, invisible worlds and downloading that into paintings, and lots of ritual and just so much. Anyways, this book is a deep dive into her journals. As I was saying, also just like the recipe and the backbone of her paintings, these were not her botanical paintings, but rather her more spiritual, abstract, sacred geometry art. So just a beautiful invitation into Hilma's universe and world. And anytime that I can learn more about specific artists' universes, what inspires their art, I feel there's a window of creativity being open, not to copy what they do, but rather to invite us all to step deeper into finding what speaks true to our bones and our organs and our hearts. So that's as far as Hilma goes, and talking about people that are inspired by something that just drives them from the inside. There's a book that I discovered this year, which I feel it's been my favorite book of all summer. Also wanted to say thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. With Squarespace, you can create a beautiful design website or online store that showcases your brand and engages customers. With easy online payments and built-in tools for inventory, shipping, fulfillment, and so much more, you can simplify your workflow and give customers a seamless shopping experience. So Squarespace and I are partnering up to offer you a 2-week free trial. And once you're ready to launch, you can use the code Arevalo to get 10% of your first purchase of a website or domain with them. And now let's keep chit-chatting about all things books. And I'm talking about this treasure book here. I got this one in a thrift bookshop online, and it's called The Zen of Seeing, Seeing Drawing as Meditation, drawn and handwritten by Frederick, Franck. So this book is not only an amazing beautiful, delicious treasure to look at because all of it is handwritten and hand-drawn. But this book also shares instructions and just invitations for us to go outside in nature and draw. And not only draw to copy what we're seeing, but rather see what we're seeing and get to experience the sensations of the landscape. So it's going once again into the energetics of living beings, like landscapes that are composed of plants and maybe animals and wind, etc. So this book is truly such an invitation to slow down, to create slow drawings, and to create from a place that feels like an opportunity to communicate in between you, the creator, and the subject that you are observing, and doing that through the language of drawing. I have released a couple of classes since falling in love with this book related to the zen of drawing, and more to come on that. Little sneak peek. I am already working in rituals around creativity, my online course that a lot of you might know from back in 2020. I'm working on the second edition. There's a wonderful class related to the zen of drawing in there. This will be coming out either early spring or early summer 2026, so feel free to stay tuned to that. I'll definitely share more here on YouTube in the upcoming months, but amazing, beautiful, creative invitation not only to focus in the theory behind creativity and drawing, but rather in the communication technology that art making can be. All right, so within that topic of getting inspired by landscapes and nature and creativity as a tool to connect it all, last year I stumbled upon this beautiful magazine called Emergence Magazine. They're all about nature. If you're a fungi, plant, herbalism, plant medicine lover, this magazine is for you. It's become one of my favorite ever magazines. I just want to show you a few of the pages. This is the edition on the subject of time, and I feel that not only what they're sharing is amazing, but as an artist, I have a sweet spot for beautiful design and how people organize things on magazines. So as someone who's also actively seeking for more offline moments, I know we can seek a lot of wonderful information online, but I'm someone who also loves to just spend an afternoon looking at a magazine that is all about the intersection in between nature and art and poetry and inspiration and spirituality and all the good things. So the design of this magazine is amazing, and it's just a beautiful invitation for time with creativity. I know I said books, but this is magazine. It looks like a book, but it's wonderful. And on the sake of sharing that, Emergence Magazine also released a few interactive journals of sorts that I have adored. This one is also related to the 5th edition of the magazine. This is the topic of time, and so is a small journal. And it's a journal in the one, once again, the design, it's wonderful. But I also adore these. All of these are invitations for things to either do outside, to either just experiments and exercises to try on your own time in order to, ask yourself questions and look within regarding all things time and how you move in your own time. And it also has a few spaces to answer questions or write notes after following those exercises. And it's pretty much the same with these ones. They're all just small invitations to write, journal, and see what comes out of this. As you might see from what I've shared so far, I truly love invitations to connect with the natural world as well as with ourselves in new ways that we might have not explored up until today. Probably one of the reasons why I love learning about indigenous practices and connections to the plant kingdom and the fungi kingdom and nature in general through their own practices, of course, always through the lens of appreciation and not appropriation. But within that topic, from here, I would love to share a little bit about my collection of books that are sharing nature. So as someone who paints Flora and Funga a lot, I mainly paint plants and fungi. As you may know, I do a lot of research for my paintings, not only regarding taxonomic divisions for different families and genres and classifications of these kin in general, but also I do research on learning about moths in general, or seeds, or fungi, and I adore books that do a deep dive on this. I also love watching documentaries, but as I was saying, being someone that is actively seeking to be away from screens, having a book that I can just look at and learn from for hours remind me of growing in the 90s and having encyclopedias at home and just learning through them. And I have a few books that are really small treasures for me regarding these topics. So this past weekend, I was having coffee with a few of my friends, and one of them invited us to ask ourselves, what is that one thing, or what are those things in the ones that we love to work for in order to be able to afford getting these? And I'm talking about luxuries in life. If there is one thing that you really, it just makes your heart so happy. In this case, it's part of my work. Maybe it is part of your work, but that you truly adore treasuring. For me, that is books, and that is books regarding the natural world. So one of my most beloved books is this one. It's the Book of Fungi. These are a series of books that each one of them goes deep down the rabbit hole of a specific topic. In the case of the Book of Fungi, you have a life-size guide to 600 species from around the world. You might know that a few years ago I worked on a painting about the fungi kingdom that portrayed around 350 different types of fungi. And learning on a book like this, in the one you not only have the visual representations of a mushroom, you also get to see them in real size. You learn from what parts of the world they are, as well as their characteristics, sometimes even folklore and just medicinal uses for them around the world, if they're toxic or not, and just the story of these beings from different points of view. So this book has been very helpful for me for my artwork and my paintings, as you may see from all the tabs and saved pages that I have. And from this collection of books, I have another amazing treasure called the Book of Seeds. Also, if you work out at home, these are perfect because they're so heavy. Okay, the Book of Seeds is a book that I have lost myself in for hours. I have been truly wanting to work on a painting about seeds from around the world, and some of my paintings include seeds. This book has been helpful for that, but I want to create a painting that's just about the world of seeds. One day to come, but look at this beauty. It's very similar to the Book of Fungi. So we have a book, in the one you have a macro look of the seed, the actual size of how they look, where they grow in the world, and characteristics not only of the seed but these specific plants. And honestly, this book is just like such a beautiful invitation to see that seeds are not only boring brown dots, but rather these jungle of colors, shapes, textures, aliens, true magical beings. I feel that they're one of my favorite things to ever exist in the world. How are you telling me that a teeny tiny thing like these contains all the information, all the DNA, all the footprint in order to create a humongous tree that works in symbiosis and relationship with other beings from different species? It just trips me out that the technology of seeds exists in this world. I know it sounds silly, but I know you understand what I mean. So I love this book. One of my favorite, treasured. A couple years ago, I worked on a painting called The Pollinator Dance, and that painting is all about the pollinators. And of course, I really wanted to give a highlight to the moths and the butterflies. And I have to be very honest, I think these books I didn't really need. I could have just gone to the library. I did go to the library and I took out a few books regarding pollination, moths and butterflies. But also one day I was visiting a bookshop and I decided to splurge and buy myself a book on moths and a book on butterflies. And these have also been wonderful opportunities, honestly, to just fall in love deeper with these magical animals that exist out in the world. I know that at least I grew up believing that moths were ugly and butterflies were pretty. This book is the perfect invitation to take away that stereotype away from our heads and learn the beauty of the moth world. Of course, the butterfly book is just a wonderful look into all the beauty of the butterfly world. It's small, so of course you don't have the whole array and you don't have every single butterfly of the world here, but there's a lot regarding species, anatomy, habitat, and just the cousins, the moths, and the reciprocity and the symbiosis and their importance and necessity for life on Earth. So just wonderful books that I love to learn from away from the screens. I do also do a lot of my research online. And one last book regarding learning about species that also speaks way more than just anatomy and habitat has been Let's Become Fungal. This book was written by Yasmine Ostendorf-Rodríguez and it was illustrated by the one and only Romy Gonzalez, and the illustrations from this book are absolutely beautiful. It's one of my favorite fungi books currently out in the world. I have a few and I have a few here in the studio which I'll show you, but look at this fungi illustrated beauties. One of the things that I adore this book, actually let me read you the whole name. Let's Become Fungal, Mycelium Teachings and the Arts, based on conversations with indigenous wisdom keepers, artists, curators, feminists, and mycologists. So this book, even though it was written by Yasmine Ostendorf-Rodríguez, it's co-created with people from all over the world, all walks in lives, all around the world, and all fields, who all love the fungi, and they all are co-creating and working with the fungi in different ways. It's an amazing, I feel one of the most accomplished books to share about the wonderful beauty and excellence of this kingdom that you may know I absolutely adore the fungi. And here you learn stories of people that are working for fungi, with fungi all over the world in different fields, and it is just wonderful to see how they are everywhere, including inside our bodies, even in the air that we breathe. But stop me here because I can talk about fungi forever. From here, I would love to share with you some books that are all about human connection with nature. Two of them are written by indigenous peoples from different communities. So one of my favorite books that I've read this year is a memoir by Nemonte Nenquimo. It's called We Will Be Jaguars, a memoir of my people. This has been one of my favorite books of this year because Nemonte is an indigenous leader from her nation, the Guarani nation in the Amazon of Ecuador. She is one of the founders of Seibo Alliance, and she is an amazing activist for the rights of indigenous peoples, indigenous women, and a voice for the natural world, the protection of the natural world across the world, especially the Amazon rainforest. And as you may know, the Amazon rainforest is one of my deepest loves in this world. I live in upstate New York. I am Peruvian and my family comes from the jungles of Peru. My mom's family is from Iquitos. My dad's family is from Tarapoto, and I have a deep appreciation for the Amazon jungle, its original peoples, its wisdom, its knowledge, their wisdom, their knowledge, as well as just leaving the jungle alone and not drilling it for petroleum or illegal mining, etc. So I could say a lot about that, but we could also leave it to Nemonte. I love learning from different people's, their story, their origin story, their lives, and I didn't know a lot about the Waorani, and learning about it through the voice, the writing, and the eyes of Nemonte has truly been an honor. One of the reasons why I love books, and I was just talking about this with my friend Heather yesterday, is because I feel through books we get to live lives we would not be able to live in our own lives. It's also a window into realities that are so far away from ourselves, and that's a lot of what I felt reading this book. It's truly all the things. I feel there are moments where the connection of the Waorani and indigenous peoples with the natural world feels so inspiring throughout this book and so activating in the best ways. It's also very annoying and it just made me feel very angry and devastated for a lot of injustice that people live within Nemonte's community. And I could just say so much about this book, but long story short, if you have the time and this is our topics that you love to learn, I feel this is a book that everybody should read, especially governors and people in positions of power in countries as well as corporations. It is a wonderful wake-up call to a lot of injustices that happened within Nemonte's community and a lot of indigenous communities around the globe. And it's also a wake-up call on how we, being so far away from the jungles, can make so many changes. And I'm about to get emotional, so I'll just stop talking about this book here. All of this to say, I am so honored to be able to read this book and get inspired by the story, the energy, the empowerment, and the beauty way that Nemonte chooses to live every single day. And hands down, one of my favorite reads of this year. One of my favorite books ever, probably too. We Will Be Jaguars by Nemonte Nenquimo. Everybody. Nemonte also co-founded Amazon Frontlines along her husband Mitch Anderson, by the way. And another book regarding indigenous knowledge, reciprocity with the natural world, the beauty way, and a wake-up call is probably your favorite book as well. One of my absolute favorite books of all time, Braiding Sweetgrass by Rubin Kimmerer. The whole name of this book is Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. If you haven't read this book, close YouTube, close your computer, run to your closest bookshop and get Braiding Sweetgrass ASAP. It is one of the most magical books that I have ever read, and I keep reading it over and over and over again. Rubin Kimmerer reads the audio to her audiobook, and I've also listened to the audiobook a gazillion times. This book is just so wonderful. And just so you get an idea of what I mean about the beauty of this book, of course, I had to open it in a section of the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address, also known as the Allegiance to Gratitude. And I'm not going to read it all to you, but just this one paragraph. And it says, "We are all thankful for the powers we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help to bring the change of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us the strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds. Now our minds are one." As Frida says, the Thanksgiving address is a reminder we cannot hear too often that we human beings are not in charge of the world, but are subject to the same forces as all of the rest of life. I absolutely adore this book, and if you love nature and you want to deepen your connection or just like rejoice in the beauty of the natural world, Braiding Sweetgrass is a book for you. I also feel everybody in this world should read this book, especially people in positions of power. And ¿qué más? I honestly have so many more books to share. There are a lot of them that I have shared with you in previous books that I love videos. So I'm not going to share those with you again, even though they are some of my favorite and they're here in my studio. But I just wanted to end this video sharing with you the titles of the books that I'm excited to read. So some of the books that I'm very excited to read up next are Upstream by Mary Oliver, Selected Essays. These are poetries and essays regarding our natural world, our connection to them, the state of the world, etc. On a very similar theme, we have Nature, Love, Medicine, essays on wilderness and wellness, edited by Thomas Lee Fleischer. We have an essay here by Rubin Kimmerer. There's also Thich Nhat Hanh and other amazing writers. Another book on essays regarding nature and nature as medicine and wilderness and wilderness and the beauty way. Lastly, I'm very excited to soon read the book by Jennifer Jewell called What We Sow, on the personal, ecological, and cultural significance of seeds. You might see there are topics that I just love to explore. Seeds are one of them, and I cannot wait to get deep into this book. There are honestly a lot of other books in the studio that I would have loved to share with you, like Wabi Sabi, Ikigai, Wildflowers, Moonbath, and those are just some of the titles that I can see from where I'm standing. So in case you want to see another low-key, relaxed video sharing some of the books that I love to have in my art studio that inspire me and keep me curious about the world, let me know. I love chit-chatting and chatting about books. It's probably one of my love languages. Thank you all so much for joining me today, for letting me keep you company in whatever it is that you're doing. If there's any of the books here that you feel inspired by, feel free to check out if any of your friends have them, if your local library has them, and if on the other hand you feel inspired to buy them and keep them in your own bookshelves. I have made a list with all the names of these books and a website where you can get them without supporting, in my opinion, the evil of Amazon. So feel free to check that out. If there are any books that have been super inspiring for you regarding any of these topics, please feel free to share them in the chat. I know that I would love to learn of what books have been the most impactful and inspiring for you. And I'm also sure that a lot of people watching this video would also love to hear which are the books that you love. Feel free to subscribe to this channel if you like what you see. I post at least 2 videos a month, every other Sunday. And I'm also around on Instagram, on Patreon. I do a bunch of online gatherings and painting and meditation stuff, so feel free to check that out. Thank you once again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day ahead. Y te veo la próxima. I will see you some other time. Bye.